our favorite video games, talking about life till 2 a.m., driving around in circles while he sings boy band songs like a goofball. I don't care as long as he's there, too. I want him to know that if I survive this, we'll be together. That's what I want. That's all I want. He's all I want. But I'm scared to tell him because I don't know what's going to happen. If I don't make it, would it have been kinder to just keep this to myself? If you were him and in his position, would you want me to tell you how I feel? Whoa.
I say not the asshole.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're losing it over here. We're fucking losing
It's
it.
incredible. That's...
Eric, look at you.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Everyone behind the camera is crying.
It's incredible.
Eric is sobbing.
To be fair, the only reason I'm not is
Oh my God, everyone's sobbing.
Beautiful. The only reason I'm not is
the sound equipment is breaking apart because Scott is sobbing onto it.
The only reason I'm not weeping is, full disclosure, I have heard this before on one of those, like, 21 female, and my boyfriend, 83.5, like, that, like, TikTok, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's gorgeous.
How many episodes left in the season are there? Like, how many updates? Oh, my, we're about to get fucking wrecked, guys. Whatever happens next is going to wreck the room.
I will say, if there's a perspective shift, it's like, hi, James writing here, like, that's when we're all gonna just explode.
We'll have to walk out.
Oh,
Can you imagine?
I cannot handle a perspective shift. I've made it this far.
Mm-hmm. I don't even mean like something happens to her. I'm just talking about
understand. Like,
hey guys, wanted to tell you how much I love, you know, it just...
Yeah, because it reminds me of the one where the dad was like, oh, I want to leave a message for my son. I was like, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do
Oliver,
that. Even
you're
trying
the
to talk
bravest,
about
coolest kid. I'm like,
I was like,
My favorite is watching you try to keep it together when you do something. We're like during that one meet and greet, and you're like, all right, man, let's take a picture.
oh, when the dad was talking about how sweet it was to like watch videos with his daughter. He's like, oh, it's such quality time. And I was like, you got to stop it.
We got to take a picture. We got to take a picture.
You got to cut it out.
You're doing the dad thing of like clearing your throat and swallowing, where you're just like, well, that's very nice to hear.
Yeah. Very good. This is very sweet. I mean...
Okay, let's buckle the fuck up. Here we go.
Let's buckle the buck.
Before we continue, any thoughts,
What, do I have any thoughts on the world's greatest story?
Do you want to say anything?
I have nothing to add.
I think they're both ducks.
All I was gonna say is the mom was talking like, oh, before you lose him, whatever. I'm like, I think you've got James by your side forever. I was like,
yeah.
I think that's my take is I'm like, sure, if you're feeling strongly about this, but I'm like, I think he's gonna be there for you no matter what.
Yeah, I'll say my thoughts are that too. The mom's a bitch.
She wasn't like, I don't know if the concern was that like, oh, I'm gonna ruin the friendship. It's more like, if something goes south with my health, is it cruel to have done this?
Right, I understand what she's saying there, but I was going back further.
Yeah.
That the mom was kind of being like, oh, you need to marry him because you might lose him.
Like, hurry up, you're gonna lose him.
And it's like, you guys are in each other's lives forever.
This is a love that transcends like infatuation and just
but
like,
you know, she's feeling that way. OP's feeling that way as well. Where OP is also, I think that's just no matter what, with feeling this extreme and this amazing, no matter what, the idea of losing it is there on the table.
Absolutely.
Like, and for OP, it happens either medically or like, just like, what if OP says her feelings and then he's like, no. And it changes what's so beautiful. But we all know, from what we know of James, nothing's f***ing this up.
Nah.
But I understand the fear.
Of course.
Yeah. It's valid for sure, but I also think like, I don't know, hearing this, you never want to like speculate on someone's sexuality, like what someone says for themselves is true, like that's truth. But hearing her say like, oh, I haven't really felt that much physical attraction for women either in any of the, you know, relationships I've been, it just hasn't really been there. I'm like, okay, well then maybe you're wired that like the emotional aspect is so much more important to you than anything else. Like, maybe there is hope for a romantic relationship.
Yeah, I mean,
they clearly love each other so damn much.
Yeah, because it's like, hey, you don't have to put yourself in any sort of box. Like, you know, like what your truth is your truth. But if you're feeling something, hey.
The best thing she's doing is not like shutting those feelings down.
Right.
She's like, even though they don't align with the box she originally is putting herself in, she's not letting that stop her. So
Right.
Yeah,
she's
absolutely.
doing everything great.
But I understand, like, it's got to be confusing.
Yeah,
It's scary.
100%.
All right, got some comments here.
Okay, unless it's from Nicholas Sparks, I don't want to hear it. Nicholas Sparks here.
Nicholas Sparks here.
You belong in my new movie.
You're the asshole. Your sexuality can be most women and James. It can be whatever you need it to be. I'm
That's
a
so
James
true.
sexual.
Most-
James and
yeah.
James Taylor.
I like women and men named James.
And men named James. It can be whatever you need it to be. I saw a nice post from a woman who came to realize after many years of marriage to her male best friend that she was almost certainly a lesbian and wasn't attracted to men, except for her husband, whom she continued to adore. Good luck in your romantic endeavors, OP, and you're going to beat that cancer. Someone said, everyone needs a James. He has been with you through everything, and he has always had your back. Speak your mind and tell him everything. I wish you all the best. OP said, yes, I want to tell him. I'm just worried that if I tell him and then things take a turn for the worst again, then what will I have done to him? Someone said, tell him. I've seen some comments where you say you're worried if things go south, what that will do to him. What I'm about to say is with pure kindness and care. Think of what it would do to him to only find out after. You both deserve to be happy. Whether it's for 1 year or 50, doesn't matter, you both deserve it. OP said, I think this comment really hit me for some reason. Thank you, I'm going to tell him when he visits me tomorrow.
That comment did it?
That's the comment that did it.
It's like,
No, but I agree. That's just
I know.
crazy that we can comment on a Reddit post and change someone's behavior.
but I also think she was looking for permission. Like, sorry for
No,
fully.
yeah.
Totally.
You know, but
No,
like,
and I think that person put it in perspective.
yeah. All she needed was a few people to be like, do it.
Yeah.
I'm bracing for impact. I'm ready for the update.
Can I tell you something as a friend with all the love in my heart? There's a part of your hair that looks
I
crazy.
don't care.
Right now. I'm just letting you know. Just letting you know.
I'm intentionally listening.
You're
It's
looking
great.
like how I look a lot of times in these Reddit stories
Oh
episodes.
no. You need to read. I don't know why we're talking about anything else but James and OP.
Just a lot of times people post photos of me here and my hair looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
I understand it looks different every episode.
Guys, he's tired. He doesn't
Guys,
go home.
I'm tired. I'm reading.
Okay, let's go.
When he's done with this, he has to power the little hamster wheel that keeps the lights on.
Yeah.
You don't have to read the update. they're gonna. Let's talk about dinosaurs some more.
Okay, so shortcake. All right, update.
Okay, here we go.
Really?
So tonight I told James. I told him everything. Gosh, I just wish I could relive this night over and over again. I've never been so happy. He came into my room this evening like he always does, greeted me, hello, how's my Amumu doing today? I told him I was doing well. He told me I looked beautiful, which is not true, but it still felt so sincere. Then he started unpacking the stuff he brought me today. I asked him to stop and just come sit with me because I wanted to talk to him. He nodded and came and sat next to me. What's up, he asked. It took me a bit to gather myself. I kept getting distracted by his eyes, how he looks at me sometimes. I don't know how to describe it. I told him, I love you. And he just kind of laughed and touched my hand before casually responding, oh, I know that. I love you too. In retrospect, this wasn't the best way to start, I guess, since we've said that enough with a different understanding that he didn't get what was happening. He started to get up again to unpack the snacks, and I grabbed his arm and asked him to let me finish. He looked confused, but he nodded and sat back down. And then I did it. I told him everything. I told him about all the times in the past I'd thought about just marrying him despite my sexuality. I told him my favorite memories of him and how they make me feel. I told him he'd always been my best friend and the person I trusted the most. I told him I made a mistake and I should have chosen him. I then basically devolved into reciting the last paragraph of my first post to him. He's the face I see when I think about feeling loved, the embrace I feel when I think about being safe. It doesn't matter what we do. If we're together, I'm happy and he's the only thing I want for the rest of my life. He basically froze. He said nothing, just looked at me as I spilled everything. I'm not sure he even blinked. When I finished and looked up at him, he was sitting there like a statue with his mouth slightly open. Still enough, it was like he forgot to breathe. James always knows what to say, so this was a little unnerving to me. I started to ask him if everything was all right, but before I could finish, his expression broke. He exhaled into a weak but incredibly tender, quivering smile, and he just reached out and pulled me into a hug. I buried my head in his chest, and his arms just wrapped around me. I just melted into him. He was so gentle, it felt so easy, it felt so right. Then he started crying, and then I started crying. He's been coming here through 2 years of cancer treatment and never seen him cry until now. He held me for a while, but however long it wasn't long enough. When he finally pulled away, his face was red from crying, but he just looked so happy. He looked at me for a bit. It was kind of cute because he had a little trouble maintaining eye contact, which he usually doesn't. He was like a little boy again. Then he finally looked right at me and he just said, "You're the only thing I've ever wanted." Then I started crying again, and he started crying again, and he pulled me to him, and he held me again. I wish it never ended. A little bit later, once we exhausted our crying capacity, I showed him the post. He made a few jokes about wanting to meet this James guy and about how he had better go and thank my mom for being his wing woman for 20 years, LOL. Then after he finished reading it, he kissed me. It felt easy, not scary at all, and just right. He asked me if it lived up to the daydreams, and I chuckled and said yes. Then he said, "I'm not so sure myself. I think I need more data," and kissed me again. He is so ridiculous, but this was smooth as butter. Then after that, we started talking, and I guess he told me everything too. He said he'd loved me since we were little kids, told me he still has every drawing / letter / craft I ever made for him in a safe that he took with him to college and has taken everywhere else he's ever lived. He talked about the day I came out as gay to him and how he'd figured it out earlier, but he struggled to accept it for months in secret because he had lived his entire life up to that point, assuming we would be a family and wanting nothing else. He told me he thought about our last night before college all the time, and he kept hoping that entire night I'd say something before he left, because then he'd have transferred colleges to stay with me. Told me he actually took a very long way home just to prolong the time when we were holding hands and I was sleeping on his shoulder, and that it was to this day his favorite memory. Then he looked at me with those piercing green eyes and said, "For me, there has never been anyone else. He loved once me and then struggled through a bunch of rebounds, and even though he had learned to bury it and move on with life and was happy in our friendship, his heart had only ever belonged to me." Honestly, I guess I should have known this. My dad told me he was sure this was true but I didn't listen. But I was flustered and deeply moved. We sat and talked and reminisced some more, mostly about when we were kids. I found out some things I never knew because he avoided telling me how romantic some things were for him after I came out, but I also kind of realized I think they felt romantic to me too. Then I brought up the sex question, and oh my God, it was the cutest shit ever. I barely got to say anything before he started tripping over himself. Like, "Look, I don't even care. I don't need that. If we need mistresses or something, we can do that. It doesn't bother me. I just want to wake up with you every day," which was sweet. But then I told him that even though I didn't know how that would go, and I might not be able to, I wanted to try with him anyway when I got better. And oh my God, he turned tomato red and could barely look at me. Literally could not even manage to form a sentence in response. Just mumbled incoherently before managing to get out, "Okay, if you're sure." This man has been married and had 6 girlfriends, but he completely just falls all over himself at the thought. God, it was adorable. This is the only thing I'm still a little worried about, but I do want to try. I mean, I liked the kissing, which I thought was completely impossible. And I know that if it doesn't turn out well, it won't ruin anything and we'll still be together and just figure something else out for that one need. Then we talked about the cancer. He is so sure I'm gonna make it. It's so touching. It took a little while to get him to take the other possibilities seriously. When I finally did, and I told him that it's the reason I didn't tell him sooner, he held my hand and told me that if that happens, he'd be okay because he'll always know that he was the one of the lucky ones because he was mine. I almost lost it. Then he said, if we don't have that much time left, we better make sure every minute counts. I said, that's pretty... Sorry, I'm only laughing because I'm hearing everyone in this room.
The full. We're losing it. I wish you guys could see what we see. Everyone's done.
I think I'm only not crying because I am driving this truck and my eyes are on the road.
I need you to keep reading.
Then he said, if we don't have that much time left, we better make sure every minute counts. I said, that's pretty hard to do in a hospital. And he replied, what do you mean? We're both here, and that makes this the best place on earth. Dear God, what did I do to deserve this man? I teared up again, and he held me one last time. Then the doctors came in, he kissed me goodnight, we both said I love you, but it felt so different. It's never felt so good to say or hear those words. Then he smiled at me and left. I was so excited, the first thing I did was call Mom, and she was just ecstatic. I think she might be happier than me, which is saying something, LOL. As soon as I told her what happened and that James and I are together, she just started crying and talking about what a good boy he is, how she just knew this would happen and that she can rest easy now because she knows I will always be loved and taken care of. Plenty of her destiny talk, which is usually gets on my nerves, but honestly, I was so happy tonight. F*** it, I'm on board. Maybe it was destiny. I guess sometimes mom really does know best. I feel like a teenager again. I never thought I'd feel this way in my life. I never imagined if I did, it would be for a man. God, I love him so much. Now I can't understand what I was ever worried about or why I didn't do this years ago. Thanks so much to everyone who read my story and helped give me the perspective and courage I needed to finally do what I should have done years ago. Now, as long as my health cooperates, I'll be one of the lucky ones too, because I am his.
Good job, Shane Top.
Update. Okay.
So is that the last update? Dang, so no more updates.
Let's just assume they live happily ever after.
I'm gonna assume that.
Yeah.
I mean, as of this update, she was saying the doctors were hopeful and it was all looking good, so
You did a great job.
thanks.
You did a great job, Shane.
Wow, what
End
a
of
fairy
the episode.
tale.
That was awesome.
It really is so beautiful that like they're like, I mean, already off the bat just communicating all the difficult stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like they're like, okay, in our first initial conversation, let's talk about the thing, like the sex
Yeah.
of it all. And
Yeah.
they're like, we'll both do whatever we got to do. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter. That's
This is
just
more
like, all right.
communication that iPad has seen in years. With one James.
This iPad's like, thank you. I
This
feel
iPad's like,
healed.
whoa.
Angela, tell me if you specifically agree with this. This felt like a one-act play that you would have to read in a like scene study class.
Oh yeah.
Like they'd be like, all right, you're being assigned to a moo and you're
Yeah.
being assigned to James, and you guys are
And
gonna
the
every
good
week.
actors get the,
The good
Act
actors
3.
get this one, yeah.
Whew. Whew.
James is unreal.
James is just a giant peach. Sorry. I feel like emotionally drained from that in a good way, but I'm just like,
I am toast.
If how do we get this to James? We're a YouTube channel. We can try.
James, if you're out there, we love you.
Please come on TNTL.
yeah, you were really slick with some of
James.
those one-liners.
You pick a show, man, and we will make it work.
James, we'll make you a rat on Bit City.
James will bring you on for Assumption's Party Goers. Just please.
James, have you ever played Flip 7?
Where you are today, buddy.
Yeah, we're doing it now.
And we're all just like not cool.
James, Spencer has to show you Resident Evil.
And he comes in and we're like, so here's the second chance card. And
We're all like so starstruck.
it really touched me that someone in the face of that much uncertainty felt like she could finally understand the destiny comments that her mom would make a lot. Or just like feeling like when you see someone who's like kind of looking at the glass half empty, finally like have hope is like the most beautiful. And she got to see that from her mom. Like she picked up on it. Like that is like, that was another layer to this that I was like, the way it brought her closer to her mom was so touching.
Yeah.
It's very
The whole thing is flippin' sweet. Just so sweet.
It's wild. Well, that's the end.
What an ep, eh?
When I think about how long that story was, though, when I think about like, oh, they were kids and she was reading a book and where they talked about space, like that seems like last week.
That was 5 other episodes.
That was 5 other episodes ago.
Yeah, that's true.
Which planet would you guys want to visit?
Whatever when James is on.
Probably, can we do moons?
Can we do moons?
What's that one moon of Jupiter that's got ice?
Oh,
Europa?
Europa. There we go.
Europa.
What? There are names of moons?
There's one that's got an ocean, and I'm just curious if there's some shit down there.
Yeah. There might be.
There might be some shit down there.
There might be some shit down there.
I think there's some shit down there. All right. Thank you guys for joining me today for this wholesome episode. Thank you for hanging through that.
Hey, no problem, man.
Thank you for all the tears shed in this room.
And thank you all at home.
And just when I thought sometimes Eric behind the camera zones out, he doesn't.
He really doesn't.
He feels deeply. He's got an artist's heart.
All right. We'll see you next Saturday. Bye.
Bye.
I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream at night any dream you wanted to dream. And you would, of course, be able to alter your time sense and slip, say, 75 years of subjective time into 8 hours of sleep. You would, I suppose, start out by fulfilling all your wishes. You could design for yourself what would be the most ecstatic life. Love affairs, banquets, dancing girls, wonderful journeys, gardens, music beyond belief. And then after a couple of months of this sort of thing at 75 years a night, you would be getting a little taste for something different. And you would move over to an adventurous dimension where there were sudden dangers involved and the thrill of dealing with dangers. And you could rescue princesses from dragons and go on dangerous journeys, make wonderful explosions and blow them up, eventually get into contest with enemies. And after you'd done that for some time, you'd think up a new wrinkle to forget that you were dreaming, so that you would think it was all for real and to be anxious about it. And then, because it'd be so great when you woke up. And then you'd say, well, like children who dare each other on things, how far out could you get? What could you take? What dimension of being lost, of abandonment of your power, what dimension of that could you stand? You could ask yourself this because you know you'd eventually wake up. And after you'd gone on doing this, you see, for some time, you would suddenly find yourselves sitting around in this room with all your personal involvements, problems, etc., talking with me. How do you know that's not what you're doing? Could be. Because after all, what would you do if you were God? If you were what there is, the self. In the Upanishads, the basic texts of Hinduism, one of them starts out saying, in the beginning was the self. And looking around, it said, I am. And thus it is that everyone to this day, when asked who is there, says it is I, and thereafter gives whatever particular name he may have. For if you were God, and in this sense that you knew everything, and you were completely transparent to yourself through and through, you would be bored. Because if, looking at it from another way, we push technology to its furthest possible development, and we had, instead of a dial telephone on one's desk, a more complex system of buttons, and one touch, beep, would give you anything you wanted. Aladdin's lamp. You would eventually have to introduce a button labeled surprise. Because all perfectly known futures, as I pointed out, are past. They have happened, virtually. It is only the true future is a surprise. So if you were God, you would say to yourself, man, get lost. And it's strange that this idea is obscurely embedded in the Christian tradition, when in the Epistle to the Philippians, St. Paul speaks of God the Son, the Logos, the Word of God, who is incarnate in Christ, and says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, thought not equality with God a thing to be clung to, but made himself of no reputation, and humbled himself, and was found in fashion as a man, and became obedient to death." Same idea. Same idea as the idea of the dream. You get that very far out dream, getting as extreme as you can get. And so this then is the basis of the Hindu view of the universe and of man. The Hindu looks upon the universe as a drama. The Westerner, of course, looks upon the universe as a construct, as something made. And it is not therefore insignificant that Jesus was the son of a carpenter. The Chinese looks upon the universe as an organism, as we shall subsequently see. But the dramatic idea is basic to Hinduism. Now, you can speak about Hinduism on two levels, at least. One I will call the metaphysical level, and the other the mythological level. If you speak on the metaphysical level, you can speak only in negative language. You can say what the divine, the ultimate reality, is not. If you speak on the mythological level, you may speak of what the divine is like, because myth is not a falsehood, as one uses the word in a sophisticated way. A myth is an image, a concrete image, in terms of which man makes sense of the world. And thus the idea of God the Father, or God the Maker, is a myth, because it's an image. And Christian theologians distinguish equally between two kinds of theological language, which are respectively called cataphatic and apophatic. Apophatic language is negative, as when we say God is infinite and eternal. Cataphatic language is mythological, as when we say God the Father, God is love, and all the positive designations. We are not saying God is a cosmic male parent, but is analogous with the Father. So with Hinduism. But what I'm going to speak to you in, first of all, is the mythological language of Hinduism. The idea of the universe as the big act. The universe is God playing hide and seek with himself. For God is thought of fundamentally to the Hindu as the self, the cosmic I. And it is a basic proposition for the Hindu that only the self, the Godhead, is real. There is nothing other than the Godhead. So that the appearance, the feeling that there are other things than the Godhead is called Maya. Maya. We ordinarily translate that word illusion. But you must be careful about the word illusion. Illusion is related to the Latin ludere. And that means play. And this is why the analogy of the world is dramatic. It's a play, in the sense of a stage play. Now, when you go to the theater, you know what you're going to see is not for real. Because the proscenium arch tells you that everything that happens on the far side of that arch is only in play, not serious. But the actor, and you will hope that he will be good at it, is going to try and persuade you that it's for real. So that he will so move you that you are crying or sitting in anxiety upon the edge of your chair. And so the audience is almost persuaded to be taken in. Now, what about if this would happen with the very best actor of all, the great actor? The audience would, of course, be completely taken in. But in this case, of course, the actor and the audience are the same, the self. The self has thus the capacity to abandon itself, to forget itself, to hide from itself, and thus to make the most completely convincing illusion, but in play. And so the activity, the creative activity of the Godhead in Hinduism is called Leela, which means play. Our word lilt is related to it, I think. But so also in the book of Proverbs, you will find a discourse being given by the divine wisdom. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his ways before his works of old. I think it's the 22nd chapter of Proverbs, in the course of which the wisdom says that its delight was to rejoice, the King James Bible says, in the presence of God and with the sons of men. But the Hebrew translated rejoice says play. Rejoice is a sort of dignified Elizabethan, but it says play. And St. Thomas, aware of this, said that the divine wisdom was above all to be compared with games, because games are played for their own sake and not for any sort of ulterior motive. So also music is a kind of non-purposive thing, because you don't either play music to reach a destination, nor do you dance to reach a particular place on the floor. It is the doing of it itself that is important, because after all, if the object of music were to gain a certain destination, those orchestras that played fastest would be considered the best. So the idea is that that dancing and music, more than other arts, represent the nature of this world. That it is playful, that it is sport. That it may be sincere, but is definitely not serious. And as G.K. Chesterton well put it once, the angels fly because they take themselves lightly. How much more so the Lord of the angels? So if a beautiful lady should say to me, I love you, and I were to reply, are you serious or are you just playing with me? That would be quite the wrong response, because I hope she's not serious and that she will play with me. I should say, are you sincere or are you just toying with me? Because you see, the word play has many different senses. A person who is playing the organ in church is certainly not doing something trivial. When you go to see a play called Hamlet, you're not seeing something trivial. When the concert artist plays Mozart, he is certainly entertaining you, but it's not a trivial entertainment. But on the other hand, we would use play in quite a different sense, when we mean just fooling around, doing it for kicks. So it is fundamental, as a matter of fact, to both the Hindu and the Christian traditions, that the universe is the play of God. But the Christian thinks of it in the terms of construction play, like building with blocks. And the Hindu thinks of it as dramatic play, of the actual participation of the Godhead in the creation, so that every being whatsoever is God in disguise. Hinduism speaks of the Godhead as, uses the word Brahman. This is a neuter form in Sanskrit from the root brih, which means to grow, to expand, to swell. The neuter form, Brahman, does not have quite the connotation then, you see, of kingship that we will find attached to the Western idea of God, but is also referred to as Atman. And this word we translate ordinarily the self. So you can have the para, param, you put the M in to connect the particle. Paramatman, which means para, the supreme self, or sometimes just the Atman alone, and that means the self in you. But the fundamental principle of Indian philosophy is Atman is Brahman. Your self is the supreme self. Or it is expressed also in the formula Tat Tvam Asi. Colloquially translated, you're it. Or Tat, that, Tvam, Latin tuam, you, Asi, are. You are that thou art. Tat, of course, is the first word uttered by a baby. Da, 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 da. And fathers flatter themselves that it's saying da-da. It's not. It's saying that. Da, 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 da. And so it's pointing to thatness in everything. It's very important to see this. Because everything is just that. I can say it in a negative way, which you won't appreciate at first, perhaps. Everything is meaningless. Only words have meaning, because they point to something other than themselves. The sound water is undrinkable, but it points to the drinkable reality. When you say, though, what is that, pointing at the water, and somebody says water, he's not being correct, because what you're pointing at is not the noise water. So it's not water. It's that. Duh. And water's a kind of jazz. And it's just doing that. And you can get to see, too, people are a kind of jazz. They talk and communicate with each other, but what does that mean? Well, they get together and they make more people, and they do this and they do that, and they eat and they go on doing this jazz, but it's just jazz. And you begin to see, as you do that, everything's like music, you see. It's all these complicated vibrations. In all kinds of ways. That's that, or thatness, ta-ta-ta, also called in Sanskrit. So anyway, this is the fundamental notion that you are really what there is, the works. Only you're playing hide and seek with yourself, and on a stupendous scale. Hindus measure time in units which in Sanskrit are called kalpa. And a kalpa is a period of 4,320,000 years. And there are two kinds of kalpa. One is called manvantara, and the other is called pralaya. Manvantara is the kalpa in which the universe is manifested, in other words, in which God puts on his big act. And pralaya is the succeeding kalpa in which the universe is unmanifested. And the Godhead does not dream, but is awake to its own nature. These are called, respectively, the days and the nights of the Brahman. And this goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. The days and nights adding up into years and centuries and eons. They speak of crore. There's a Sanskrit measure, crore, C-R-O-R-E. A sort of a word that really I think means umpteen. Crores of kalpas. And this is the in-breathing and the out-breathing. There's the word hangsa. And this word in Sanskrit, hangsa, means a swan or a big water bird, like a gander. There's a myth that there is in the beginning the divine bird which lays the egg of the world. And the egg splits, and the upper is the heavens, and the lower is the earth. So when the worlds are manifested, the Lord breathing out says, hung. And when the worlds are withdrawn, the breath comes back, hung. But if you say hung, sa, hung, sa, hung, sa, hung, it becomes sa, hung, sa, hung. Sa, ahang. That means, sa means that, the truth, ahang, I am that. It's like, imagine, when we get to the final moment in which the world is blown up. You know, imagine the countdown. This is the end. Somebody's pushed the button. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What are you listening to? Sound of the wave. And you can sit and listen to the little waves on the seashore. And you get back here into this kind of thinking, and you're hearing the ocean of the universe going. And that's your breathing, too. It's all one rhythm. So it may be that every star was once a planet populated by intelligent people who found out about the fundamental energy of the universe and blew themselves up. And as they blew up, they scattered all kinds of stuff out which became little planets. Which in a long time, life started all over again. Because the Hindu theory is very odd. Every kalpa in the Manvantara period, where there's a manifested world, is divided into 4 subdivisions of time, each one of which is called a yuga. That means roughly an epoch or an era. And there are 4 yugas, and they're named after the different throws in the Indian game of dice. There are 4 such throws, and the first is called Krita. That means, Kri means to do, as when we say something is done, truly done. It's the perfect throw of 4. The second is called Treta, which is the throw of 3. The next is called Dvapara, which is the throw of 2. And the final one is called Kali, which means the worst throw, which is the throw of 1. Now, each of these periods of the kalpa are of different lengths. Krita is the longest, and Kali is the shortest, and so ranged. So that when the world is first manifested, as in those dreams that I were mentioning to you, the world is in a golden age to begin with. It's perfect. And that is the longest period of time. Then when we get a little bit more adventurous, you see, The treta means that in this era, a kind of disharmonious element enters into things. It's like a three-legged chair isn't so secure as a four-legged chair. It's just a bit inclined to tip. And as there was a fly in the ointment, a snake in the garden. Then comes Dvapara, in which the forces of good and evil are equally balanced. And finally, Kali, which is the shortest period, where the forces of evil are triumphant, and the world is destroyed at the end of it. For then the Godhead appears in the form of Shiva, who represents the destructive aspect of the divine energy, and whereas Brahma is the creative, Vishnu the preserver, Shiva the destroyer. But Shiva is always the destroyer in the sense of the liberator, the guy who breaks up the ruts. And he comes on with a blue body and 10 arms and a necklace of skulls. Indian gods have many arms because they are cosmic centipedes. They do all things without having to think about it. Like the centipede doesn't have to think about how to manipulate its legs. Like you don't have to think how to grow your hair. And as Shiva dances what is called the Tandava, which is the dance of destruction at the end of the cycle, at the end of the kalpa, you will see that his hands contain clubs and knives and bells, but one hand is like that. And that gesture means don't be afraid. It's a big act. It is all, as it were, the outflowing of your own consciousness, of your own mind. Now then, the Hindu life is related to this cosmology. And the objective of life is, of course, in the end, to wake up from the dream when you've had enough. And so the dreaming process is called sometimes samsara. Samsara is the round, the rat race. And samsara is divided into 6 divisions. I better draw a map, I think. This is common, you see, cosmology to both the Hindus and the Buddhists. This is the world of the Deva. And this is the same root from which we get both divine and devil. But Deva means angel. The highest and most successful beings in the universe. And so opposite, this is the world of Naraka, who are the most unsuccessful. These are the purgatorial worlds of extreme suffering. This is the world of Ashura. They are also angels, but they're angry angels, representing the wrath potential of energy. This is the world of animals. This is the world of preta, for which we have no English equivalent. They are hungry or frustrated spirits who have enormous stomachs but mouths only the size of needles. Vast appetite and no means of fulfillment. And this is the Manu world, that is to say, the world of man. You don't have to take this literally. You could say, when you're extremely happy or ecstatic, you're here. When you are miserable, you're here. When you're dumb, you're here. When you're mad, you're here. When you're frustrated, you're here. But when you're more or less your normal, rational self, you're here. Now, so all life, through the period of the kalpas, goes grinding around this wheel. And if you go up, and you succeed, and you get to the top, you have to come down. They don't see success, in other words, in the world as a method of liberation, because it implies failure. So the idea of liberation, which is called moksha, is the ideal of Hindu life. Wake up, it's a dream. And in time, there is no hope in time. Everything is going to get worse in time. Because, as you know, it does. We all fall apart in the end. Everything falls apart. Institutions, buildings, nations, it all crumbles. And people say, well, that's an awfully pessimistic philosophy. Well, is it? I would rather say that the people who have hope in the future are the miserable people. Because they're like donkeys, chasing carrots that are dangled before their noses from sticks attached to their collars. And they pursue and they pursue in vain, always hoping that tomorrow will be the great thing, and therefore incapable of enjoying themselves today. People who live for the future never get there, because when their plans mature, they are not there to enjoy them. They're the sort of people who spend their lives saving for their old age, and trying to teach their children to do the same thing, so that when they retire at 65, you know, they have false teeth and wrinkles and prostate trouble and all that sort of thing. Where were you going? What did you think it was all about? Furthermore, the fact that life is transient is part of its liveliness. The poets, in speaking of the transience of the world, always utter their best poetry. You know, our revels now are ended. And these our actors, as I foretold you, are all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great earth itself, aye, all which it inherits shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a wreck behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made of, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. And said so well, it doesn't seem so bad after all, does it? You see, there's always in the poetry of evanescence a kind of funny nostalgia. Moralists will say, those lovely lips which you so delight to kiss today will in a few years rot and disclose the grinning teeth of a skull. So what? The skull says, lying in the grass, chattering finch and waterfly are not merrier than I. Here among the flowers I lie, laughing everlastingly. No, I may not tell the best. Surely, friends, I could have guessed. Death was but the good king's jest. It was hid so carefully. And monks used to keep skulls on their desks. And people nowadays think that was very morbid. I went and visited a chapel in the Via Veneto in Rome, where there's a crypt where all the altar furnishings are made out of human bones. The altars are piles of skulls. There are rib bones arranged across the ceiling like floral patterns with vertebrae representing flowers. And they're all dead Capuchin monks. And there's a funny little monk collecting the admissions up at the top. And he has one of the funniest grins on his face I've seen in a long time. I said to him, you know, on the day of resurrection, there's going to be an awful lot of scuttling up this narrow staircase. People trying to reassemble their bones. Oh, dear Father, isn't that my fifth metatarsal? So, the whole idea, you see, is that Everything's falling apart. So don't try and stop it. When you're falling off a precipice, it doesn't do you any good to hang on to a rock that's falling with you. See? But everything is doing that. And so again, this is another case of our completely wasting our energy in trying to prevent the world from falling apart. Don't do it. And then you'll be able to do something interesting with the free energy. So that's moksha. Because when the Hindu says everything is unreal, the Westerner reacts and says, no, you can't treat life as a dream. It's serious, it's real, it's for real. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, how real do you want it to be? This is, in other words, everything, insofar as it's falling apart, everything is changing, it is like smoke. And we all feel that smoke has a lesser degree of reality than wood. It's an image of the evanescent, of the ghostly. So there's this idea the whole world is this mirage. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's only bad if you cling to it, if you try to lean on it. But if you don't lean on it, it's a grand illusion. So the word maya means not only illusion, but it means art, it means magic, and it means creative power. So this is the big act. And it's perhaps easier to feel the world in that way in a tropical country where death is very common and where you just watch things dissolve before your eyes and yet burst out and grow again. The whole world is changing. Maybe easier to think that way than in our environment. Although when you're out in California, the human landscape changes so fast that no town is the same for 2 years. Any mailing list that you have changes 1/3 addresses per annum. Nothing stays put. The hills are shadows and they flow from form to form and nothing stands. Now, this, you see, is not a pessimistic attitude, therefore, at all. To be able to realize that this world is simply a dream, a dancing play of smoke. Fascinating, yes, but don't lean on it. Life is a bridge, says one of the Hindu sayings. Pass over it, but build no house upon it. And so immediately you see that. This is responsible for the enormous gaiety of certain Hindu sages. This is a thing that often puzzles Westerners. The element of, they expected anybody who's an ascetic or a sage or something to be rather miserable, with a glum face. But on the contrary, you take this character who's going around these days, Maharshi Mahesh, he's always laughing. Because he sees through it. He looks on every side, and there is the face of the beloved, of the divinity, in everybody, in every direction, in everything, playing at being you. And you can look down into a person's eyes, way, way in, and you see the self, the eternal divine. And what is so funny, when it puts on an expression, saying, what, me? And the guru, the teacher. When people go to a guru, they get all sorts of funny ideas. They think, oh, he's looking right through me. He sees me through and through. He knows how awful I am. He reads my most secret thoughts. Because he has a funny look in his face. He isn't even interested in your secret thoughts. He's looking straight at the Godhead in you, with a funny expression on his face, which is saying, why are you trying to kid me? Come off it, Shiva, I know who you are. But, and therefore, you see, his role is to gently humor you into waking up as to your true nature. Now, of course, as I intimated earlier, The Hindu is therefore saying everybody is God. And this is why when a Hindu greets you, he does this. That is the act of puja, or worship to the Godhead in you. And our theologians get rather worried about that, because, you see, the two conceptions of God are different. Our conception is of the boss man, the king. Theirs is of the cosmic centipede with the many arms, who does not have to think how to make the world, or rather to act the world. That would be an insufferable nuisance. You may think it rather wonderful when St. Thomas tries to explain that God is fully aware of everything that happens, and in every detail is willing each single vibration of any mosquito's wing. But when you really begin to think about it, that approaches intellectual elephantiasis. God heard the embattled nation shout, Gott strafe England and God save the king. God this, God that, and God the other thing. Good God, said God, I've got my work cut out. So therefore, when somebody in India suddenly announces that he's God, nobody accuses him of blasphemy or of being insane. They say simply, congratulations, at last you found out. And they don't immediately request a miracle. As you see, if we get across someone who says, I'm God or I'm Jesus Christ, they say what they said to Jesus Christ in the first place. Command that this bread, these stones be made bread. And you know, he used to wangle out of it by saying, a wicked and deceitful generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given. The Hindu would say, but there is no point in changing it. It's going the way I want it to anyhow. Only really and truly, there is not this idea of God the technician, but rather the power of omnipotence is not to be able to do anything, but to be doing all things, whatever it is that's going on. And spontaneously, without having to think about it, which is very clumsy. Now then, I must say something about how then this relates to the life of the Hindu. The Hindu divide life into certain stages, what are called the ashramas. The first is called brahmacharya, the second grihastha, and the third vanaprastha. Brahmacharya means the stage of the student, the apprenticeship. Grihastha, the stage of the householder. And vanaprastha, the stage of the forest dweller. This is related to cultural history of early India. Before we have agrarian communities, we have a hunting culture, which is on the move. In a hunting culture, every male knows the whole culture. There is no division of labor. And the holy man of the hunting culture is, of course, called a shaman. A shaman is a realized man, a man who knows the inner secret. He's seen through the game. And he finds it by going away alone into the forest and cutting himself off from the tribe. That is to say, from social conditioning. And he goes maybe for a long period into the forest and comes back. He's found out who he is. And he sure isn't who he was told he was. But as hunting cultures settle into agrarian patterns of life, what do? They build a village. And around the village, they set up a stockade, which is known as the Pale. And the village is always, of course, standing at crossroads. And there you get in an agrarian society a division of labor. And the division of labor comprises four. In medieval Europe, we call them lords spiritual, lords temporal, commons, and serfs. In India, they are Brahmins, Kshatriya, that means fighters, Vaishya, merchants, traders, Shudra, laborers. So you've got the priests, the warriors, the merchants, and the laborers. Division of labor. The four sections of town. And so the four basic castes. So when you are born into a caste, and your duty as a grihasta or householder is to fulfill your caste function and to bring up a family. When you've done that, you go back to the forest, back to the hunting culture, and you drop your role, and you become nobody. A shaman again. So a Hindu calls one who does this a shramana, which is of course the same word as shaman. And the Chinese call him a xia man. Shaman. A shaman is an immortal. Why immortal? Because it's only the role that's mortal. The big front, the persona. The one who you really are, the common man, that is to say, the man who is common to us all, which you could call the son of man, that's the real self. That's the guy who's putting on the big act. And of course, he has no name. Nobody can put the finger on him, because you can't touch the tip of the finger with the tip of the finger. So that means in practice then, that when you hand over your vocation in life, which is called your svadharma, that means sva, that's the same as the Latin suus, one's own. Dharma means function. Your own function, or we would call your vocation. When you've completed it, you drop out and become nobody. Because you're going to find out now who you really are. You're no longer Mr. Mukhopadhyaya, who is a fast salesman. You drop that name, and you take on one of the names of God, Swami Brahmananda, Swami, bliss of Brahman. And you may go quite naked, like the Shivite holy men. No clothes. And they just go out and wander and don't make any provision for anything. They literally take no thought for the morrow, what you shall eat, what you shall drink, or wherewithal they shall be clothed. But you see, people respect them. They say, yeah, we got to have those people up there, because they are doing what human being is ultimately supposed to do, and we shall do it in our turn. And so give them some food. Now, naturally, caste, holy men, and all that kind of thing can be exploited. Anything can be exploited and abused. But we can look at it all and say, what a mess. Why don't you do something for yourself? Why don't you kill the sacred cows and eat them? Why don't you clean up? Why do you permit all this disease? Just try and see something from another point of view for a change. I'm not saying that we should do what the Hindus do, but just look at it from another point of view. they would smile at us and say, "You really think it's as real as all that? Have you never experienced what's on the inside of this game? The trouble with you Westerners is you've never experienced bliss. You've never got down to the root of reality. You don't know that state of consciousness. So you're frantically trying to patch everything up and pin it all together and screw the universe up so that it's fixed. And you can never do it. All you're doing is going wildly rushing around and creating trouble. Of course, Western-educated Hindus think the same way. They are now for rushing around and patching India up. And what's going to happen is they're going to arm all the millions of people in India. And they're going to create a lot of trouble in Asia one of these days when they become a powerful society. When you read Milton's Paradise Lost, long before Lucifer decided to rebel, the whole of heaven was armed. And he describes the legions of angels with their escutcheons and gonfalons and military deportment. Who was looking for trouble? You know, Lucifer was a good guy back then, see? The bearer of light. So the Hindu looks at our Christianity, though, and sort of thinks, my goodness. Here is the eternal self. But in the idea of Christianity, the Godhead is having a real far-out one. Because not only is he incarnating himself, say, as some wretched beggar, but he's incarnated himself as a Christian soul who believes that in this one short life he will decide his eternal destiny. And the possibilities of making a mistake are far greater than of being a lousy beggar. The possibility involved in the Christian gamble is to fry in hell forever, and ever and ever and ever. Even the Avicii hell at the bottom of the Naraka only goes on for about one kalpa. But the everlasting damnation, what an idea. So the Hindu says, bravo, you know, God has really done a dare on himself this time to be a Christian soul.